Good afternoon. My name is Bill Lucido. I'm coming to you from my sheltering in place in my new condo. I've been in Rotary for 38 years. My sponsor was Dr. Dave Haddon, or as you better know him as Dr. Death. I had the honor of being your president in 1991. My classification back then was flight instructor. I finally got it changed to fighter pilot, and now it's Catholic deacon. What I want to talk to you today is about my Camino de Santiago, my 500-mile walk across northern Spain that I completed in 2015. This Camino has been trodden by travelers over 1,000 years, and it takes us to the final resting place of St. James the Great. My first day was an 11-hour trip from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port in France on the east side of the Pyrenees in the Basque region. I climbed over 4,600 feet and crossed over into Spain that day. It's like walking up the 4-lane from Prather to Shaver Lake as far as distance goes, but it is still 700 feet short. So why do people do it? Atonement for sin, penance, is one of the big reasons. In the Middle Ages, the priest would give them this penance. Rich nobles would pay a peasant to go do it for them. Others do it as an arrangement with God. God, if I do this, will you give me that? Some do it for gratitude, thanksgiving for, sometimes a transition in life, death of a loved one, divorce, retirement, sometimes overwhelmingness or mental illness, sobriety, or grief, reevaluating a life's career, change in vocation, change in values, crying out to God for help, intimacy with another one. When people become empty nesters, they like to go do it. Some people do it with their children, some for simple contemplation. Others, it is just an athletic event. Some of the statistics, they say 51% are men, 93% are walkers, the other 7 cyclists. The age group that makes up 55% are from 30 to 60. 28% are under 30 years old. 44% are Spanish. There's only about 3.5% from the United Kingdom. 60% walk the Camino Francais, the very main one. I did the Camino Francais. Goes from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port to Santiago. You can see on this map all of the other Caminos, the Portuguese, the Northern, the Seville. I started in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port and walked 776 kilometers. For you that use miles, that would be 482 miles. Took me 33 days on an average of 4.6 miles a day. You cannot go more than 1,000 yards without seeing a yellow arrow or a shell or a marker. The picture that I saw every day was this shadow, because I always had my head looking down to see where I was going. Betsy loved this picture I took of it so much that I had it blown up and printed out for her, and it was her Christmas present in 2016. I only got lost once. I actually went 15 minutes out of my way before I realized my error. As you walk along, you carry a credential with you. Some call it a passport. And as you stop at albergues where we spend the night, churches, museums, I even stopped at the University of Pamplona and got a stamp at each one of these places. When you get to Santiago, you turn that in and show it to the rector of the cathedral, and they give you a certificate. I went by myself, but all along the way, we helped each other. We shared water, food, told each other which way the path went. There's a story I'd like to share about 2 Frenchmen, 2 brothers. One was blind, the other was sighted. The blind brother would hold on to a rope that his sighted brother pulled along in front of him. He trusted his brother. Where I met them was in a bar. We call a bar any restaurant, sandwich shop, or bar as we know it. And the two brothers had to use the baño. So the blind brother went in first. When he came out, the sighted brother had to go in. So some woman took the rope. The blind brother did not even know her. And she led him outside to wait for his sighted brother. These two brothers made it all the way to Santiago. I stopped in Pamplona, which is where Hemingway for a while, and wrote about the running of the bulls. I gotta tell you, I was not there when the bulls ran. The road, the Camino, the path, takes you alongside freeways, farm roads, through little villages, up steep hills, down steep canyons. And they have grapes just like we do in Fresno. And they also have tractors. Here's a John Deere, but I also saw Ford and Italian-made tractors. The hills sometimes were steep and could be quite treacherous in the rain. There's at least two ways to do anything on the Camino. A classic example is rain gear. The person on the left has a poncho. This keeps them dry, their head, their pack, their body, but the wind has a tendency to blow up underneath it. I wore the costume on the right, which is a rain jacket and rain pants with a cover over my backpack. This worked well, except that I was like hermetically sealed and had quite perspiration in the middle. Another example is footwear. Some people wore hiking boots, as I did. Others would wear sandals. Some tennis shoes. You saw almost everything. A typical day at 6 to 6:30 in the morning, we would get up, get cleaned up, and then start our walk between 6:30 and 7. The sun didn't come up till 8 or 8:30. As I moved across the month of September, the sun came up later and later. Sometimes we would grab breakfast before we left. Sometimes there was no breakfast available and we would eat at the first little town we came to. Lunch was much the same way. By 12:30 to 2 o'clock, we would find an albergue, a place where we would spend the night. First thing we would do was shower and then wash our clothes. Then around 6 o'clock would come dinner, sometimes mass at 8 o'clock, and then to bed. A typical meal came in 3 courses. The first course was a salad or a soup or something like that. The second course was a main dish which involved chicken, meat, fish. They had an interesting dish that was a fried egg with a piece of pork on it. The dessert were flan, cake, ice cream, all kinds of different things. If I had 30 of these meals over my 35 or 36 days there, I had flan at least 30 times. And then there was always a drink with it. Yes, a glass or two of red wine. For some, a beer, and for those that don't partake, water or a soda. At Mass, when we had a chance, we would always pray the Pilgrim's Prayer. They had it printed and laminated. A German would read his version, an Italian, a Frenchman, an Englishman, a South Korean. We all had a copy of the prayer. There's 2 things that really struck me about Spain. There was plenty of water. And the faucets didn't turn on and off. They were a push button. The water would run for 20 to 30 seconds. In the small towns, sometimes the churches were locked due to the lack of a priest. In the towns where there were a Mass, there were mostly old people and pilgrims, not very many young people. Albergues, where we stayed, would be a room housing 8 to 50 people in one room. Co-ed, as well as the baños were co-ed. This was very interesting, but I never did have a trouble. After getting settled, the first thing we would like to do is have that refreshing shower. And then came the everyday chore of washing our clothes. I basically had 3 sets: shirts, pants, underwear, one that was dirty, one that was in the wash, and one that was clean. Here's a typical albergue. Metal bunk beds, cramped quite tightly into the room. I wore earplugs almost every night to keep the storing out. We could not bring our boots into the albergue. They had to stay in a bookcase type affair outside the door. They didn't want us bringing bed bugs from the countryside into the albergue. I'm a great father. I'm a great grandfather. I was a great husband. I was a great fighter pilot. I was a great Rotarian. I am not a hand holder. When I saw this little couple holding hands, and they had to be in their late 70s or early 80s, I had to take this picture and send it home to my wife, Betsy. I arrived in Santiago de Compostela on October the 8th, 2015. This was my 72nd birthday. When I showed them my credential and got this beautiful certificate that says I did it, it's in Latin, and I would like to read it to you. It says, William Lucido did it. That evening at my birthday party in the little bar, which was truly a restaurant, there was a couple I'd been traveling with, and they thought nobody should go on their birthday without having a gift. So they snuck out and brought in this gift for me. It's a 4-inch tile. It's got the shell on it and the arrow, which told us where to go every day. The cathedral has been under restoration for years. 2015, they had finished the left spire, but we're still working on the right spire. 2019, the interior of the cathedral was closed to liturgies and mass, but not to tourists, while they renovated it. You may have seen in the video with Martin Sheen, The Way, the thurible, the incenser, which is about 5 feet tall, that swings back and forth. It was really something to see. After I was finished, I had to travel the whole north-south length of Spain to get down to near Gibraltar. It took me 3 trains, one of them the Spanish high-speed rail, and I arrived at the Rota Naval Base. Got on an Air Force C-17, since I am a retired Air Force veteran, and flew 12.5 hours to McChord Air Base, Washington. At this point, I got on Alaska Air and flew home to Fresno. My granddaughter Grace and my grandson Corbin met me there. I still can't believe I walked 500 miles, actually lost 22 pounds. What a great privilege. Life is a journey, a pilgrimage. I wish it were that simple, that is life, as it was on the Camino. Why did I do it? In my 8th day of my journal, I wrote, I am doing this in thanksgiving for my becoming a deacon. So, this is Pilgrim Bill Lucido. Behind the camera, Grace Baker, my granddaughter, a senior at San Joaquin Memorial. Buen Camino.